So recently I made a post where I asked you which off-meta build I should try to make viable in PvE. And the most votes got Greatsword plus Wand for healing. And this is a really interesting combination for healing, which doesn't make a lot of sense in the first place. But I think I found a good way to make the Paladin build viable in dungeons. And when played well and correctly, it can be one of the best healing combinations for dungeons. Okay, but why is that so? When you're already playing for a bit, then you might have noticed that when you have a good group, there's really not a lot of healing needed. And it's generally just more about dealing a lot of damage. With this build you won't deal crazy amount of damage, but you will be able to boost the damage of all of your teammates. In this guide I will show you two different builds which have just a lot of potential as a healer. We will have a look on the skills, the masteries and also all the items that you should look out for. And in the end I also added two boss fights which showcase the builds. So let's start with the skills. Both of the builds have the same basis, which consists just of a few skills which are so good that we just have to take them in every build. Okay, so let's see what skills build here our basis. So from the wand we are taking all three healing spells. We're taking the single target heal, the AoE ground heal and the AoE heal with a cast time. The next spell we always have to take here from the wand is Time for Punishment, because it reduces the skill damage resistance here of our target, which increases the overall damage from all our teammates, which we of course always have to take. All the other spells can be situational good, but for the most part are not needed. Okay, so let's come to the Greatsword. Here we have three really good spells which increases the damage of all of our teammates. First up we have Willbreaker. It acts similar as Time for Punishment. It reduces the armor of our enemies. Da Vinci's Courage gives our complete team attack speed. Blood Devotion will, with some upgrades later on, give our whole party more base damage. So all of these buffs are really strong and buff the damage of our team. So of course usually the tank should also use all of those three spells, and these skills are not stacking. But we will discuss later on how we should play that. Okay, but the last spell we always want to take them from the Greatsword is Stunning Blow. Stunning Blow stuns an enemy, and if it's a boss, then it's shocking the boss. Why we always want to take this is because we are always playing with the passive Cold Warrior, which gives more than 200 heavy attack chunks when we are attacking a stunned or a shocked target. And this is in boss fights just really good and will boost our damage immensely. Okay, so for the passive, the rest is also mostly the same in both builds. Additionally, we will take Vital Force, which will give us a little more hit chance, skill damage boost and stun chance. Here really relevant is only the skill damage boost, and though it won't be a lot, it's still better than nothing. Then we have to take Victor's Moral, which gives us mana back when we are hitting a skill. So mana will be a problem with this build, so we have to take the skill. Now from the wand we always take Selfless Soul, Devotion of Emptiness and Noble Revival. These passives just passively increase our healing power and give us mana regeneration, which is of course all really important and really good. And the last skill we of course always want to take is Vampiric Contract, where we heal a selected teammate by a percentage of our damage if we are attacking a cursed target. So if Time for Punishment, for example, is on the boss and you are dealing damage to it, then you are healing a friendly party member. So a lot of people were asking me in my last healer guide how to select other party members and the boss at the same time. I'm not sure how it works on console, but on PC you can always select an enemy and a friendly character at the same time. So if you use a heal, then your friendly character is being targeted, and if you use a damage spell, then the boss for example will be targeted. So this is something we always want to take. Okay, now let's do for our bases also already the skill specialization. Let's start with the heals. For swift healing we are taking the increased range and that we can use it 3 times. The range is just always really good, because sometimes people are on the other side of the arena and then we can reach them way easier. Now that we can use the heal 3 times is usually not needed, but what I like to do with this build is changing Clay of Salvation to Janus Rage. So now the spell is not healing anymore, but it buffs the damage of all our party members. Why do I think that we don't need the AoE heal anymore? We'll see when we come to the Greatsword specializations. But for Janus Rage we are also taking now the additional range, just because it's then easier to apply the buff to everyone. Now for Fountain Life we are taking the increased radius and that it also gives mana for everyone. Now we can place the spell right under the boss and everyone around the boss will get healed and now is also getting mana. So of course really strong, we both always want to take that. Okay, and then for Time for Punishment we want to take the increased duration, just because it gives us more uptime and more uptime means our whole party is dealing more damage. Okay, now let's come to the Greatsword. For stunning blow, we want to take the reduced cooldown, so we can shock the boss more often, which will let us more heavy hit and increase overall our damage. For Da Vinci Courage, we are taking the increased duration of the skill, which again just buffs our whole party longer, and additionally we will make that the skill also heals our whole party at the beginning. And my experience with this build is that this skill plus Fountain Life is more than enough AoE heal for all dungeons. That's why I think we don't need the other AoE heal from the Wand. Okay, for Willbreaker we don't need any upgrades. And for Blood Devotion we are making that the skill now also targets all our party members, we are increasing the duration, and all of that just because we want to increase the base damage of all of our teammates. Base damage is just really broken in PvE, that's why you just have to play with the skill. Okay, now the basis for both builds is almost done. One thing that will be also always the same is the block. We will be always playing with the Greatsword block. Because this block is just way too good in PvE. It gives us heavy attack chance, skill damage boost, and can even shock or stun the enemy. It will just heavily increase our damage, so we always want to take this block. Okay, now we have our bases which we take for both builds. Now we can just take 4 more active skills, but these will define how we play this build. One build will be a range build and one build will be a melee build. For the melee build we are taking all 3 single target damage spells from the Greatsword, because in dungeons the most important encounter is of course always the boss, for which we should optimize our build. And most of the time for this we only need single target damage. So we are taking Violent Brawl, Death Blow and Guillotine Blade. Violent Brawl has just a really short cooldown, it is one of our spammable skills. And Death Blow and Guillotine Blade have way longer cooldowns, but they are also hitting really hard. Importantly also to mention that both of these spells deal additional damage against stunned or shocked targets. That's why Stunning Blow and also the Greatsword block are just really important. And the last skill we will take will be Precision Dash. This is just because it increases our heavy attack chance for a short duration. Heavy attack chance is just always good. And the last passive we will be taking is Raging Frenzy, which increases our skill damage boost when 3 or more people are around. It's really just good for killing trash mobs, but here it's just really good and we just don't have anything else to take. So if you're not feeling so safe right now, you can of course always take your also robust Constitution, which will give you just quite a bit of additional health. Okay, now let's have a look on the skill specialization for this build. For Violent Brawl we are taking the second upgrade, which increases our damage for a short time after the usage of the spell. For Precision Dash we are taking the increased duration of the heavy attack buff. So after the usage of both of these spells we are getting a lot of heavy attack chance and we just overall increasing our damage. And for Death Blow and Guillotine Blade we are making both of the skills to chargeable skills. Since we don't have so many damage skills, we have more than enough time to always fully charge both of these skills. And then of course we are reducing the cooldown of both of these builds, and at last we're making Guillotine Blade also an AoE attack if we crit or heavy hit. The AoE effect can just drastically help when we're clearing trash. Okay, this would be a build for you if you like to be a melee. You still have your hard hitting spells from the Greatsword, which will give you crazy damage numbers. But at the same time you have more than enough heals and so many buffs for your team. It's really an interesting playstyle as a melee healer, but it just works really good. Now let's have a look on the second build, which is more of a range build. Okay, so let's take our bases here again. Instead of going now for the melee damage spells from the Greatsword, we are going for the curse damage spells from the Wand. So for this we are taking Touch of Despair, Curse Explosion and Corrupted Magic Circle. Touch of Despair is a single target dot, Corrupted Magic Circle is an AoE dot with a short cast time, and Curse Explosion can consume all dots on an enemy and deal the dot damage instantly. So the idea is that we are applying our dots on the enemy and then consuming those dots with Curse Explosion and dealing the damage instantly. Okay, now the last skill we want to take here is Ray of Disaster, which creates a connection between you and your enemy and deal constantly damage. Okay, now we only have to take one more passive, and here we are taking Wraith Beacon. This is just because it increases the duration of all of our curse spells. If we increase the duration of our curse spells, then there's of course also more damage that can be consumed from Curse Explosion, which will in the end increase our overall damage. Okay, but now let's have a look on the skill specialization which we have to take here. For Touch of Despair we are increasing the duration of the skill. As just mentioned, if the dot is longer on the enemy, then there is more damage that can be consumed from Curse Explosion. And then for Curse Explosion, we are taking all 3 upgrades. Alright, so the first upgrade decreases the damage of the skill by 50%, which is of course not so nice. But now it keeps all the dots on the enemy. So that means we can have constantly all the dots on the boss and still use Curse Explosion over and over, which will just give us a huge damage boost. The second upgrade will just increase the damage per stack of Touch of Despair on the enemy, which is obviously always good. And the last upgrade makes the skill a single target spell, but reduces its cooldown. Most DPS we anyways need always for the boss fights, so it's really no problem that it's now a single target spell. For the Corrupted Magic Circle, we only take the first upgrade, which makes it also now a single target spell. But we are reducing the cast time of the skill, which is of course really nice. And the last upgrades we are putting into Ray of Disaster, which just increases the overall damage and heavily reduces the cooldown of the skill. So this build plays a little different. You are for the most part playing on range, but every time you have your stunning blow or your will break up, you are getting close to apply the debuffs. But if you like playing more on range, then this build might be something more for you. Okay, now let's have a look onto the masteries. The masteries will be also completely the same for both builds. So for the Greatsword, we of course want to have here our 100 heavy attack chance. So this is something you always want to take. The other points you can spend however you want. There's really nothing special which you need here. Okay, so for the wand I like to go for the top tree. Just because it provides us with a lot of additional damage, but also with a lot of cooldown reduction, which is of course always really nice when it comes to healing. And if we are getting our weapon to level 16, then we can also take the additional healing power from the healing tree in the middle. Okay, that's it, all you need to know about the masteries. Okay, so both of these builds have a lot of potential, but they have 2 major problems. The first major problem is that a lot of good tanks will also play with all these Greatsword buffs. So Blood Devotion, Da Vinci's Courage and also Willbreaker. And these buffs are not stacking. So when we want to make this build useful, we have to use it at the right time. So for Blood Devotion it's always clearly visible when the tank is using it. So we can always just use it right after. That's just easy. Da Vinci's Courage is also good visible, especially if you move the health buffs more to the center of the screen. So then you can always clearly see when the buff is running. Most tanks will activate them at the beginning, always wait till their buff runs out and then use your Da Vinci's Courage. And for Willbreaker it's for sure a little harder to see. But even if you don't time it perfectly, it still provides a lot of value, and having here a higher uptime on the boss is just always really good. Okay, and the second problem with this build are the mana problems. Healing costs a lot of mana. So if you have a good group and you don't have to heal, then of course you don't have mana problems. But as soon as people are doing a lot of mistakes and you have to heal a lot, then you will get a lot of mana problems. And yes, of course we have the skill Victor's Moral, which gives us a little mana back, but first of all it doesn't count for dot damage, which is of course really bad for our range build, which mostly deals damage with dots. But also for the melee build it's not perfect because it counts for each hit you are doing and not how heavy you are hitting. Even if you do a 20k crit, that doesn't give you more mana back. It's so important to understand that because we have to build now correctly. Okay, so let's have a look on the gear. I've created here 2 builds which are easy farmable for everyone, so they don't require any world boss drops. I created here 1 build for the melee variant and 1 build for the ranged variant. As always in my PvE builds, the focus here is highly on the base stats, because base stats just influence the base damage of our weapons, and the base damage is the basis of all of our skills. If you want to deal a lot of damage or heal a lot with a skill, then you need high base damage. And for high base damage you need high base stats. And additionally I focused here on mana cost efficiency and mana regeneration. So with these builds you have up to 900 mana regeneration, which will be really good in longer fights. So right now in the tier 1 dungeons, this will be not required. There will be probably soon also the hardcore variants of those, and we will also get the tier 2 dungeons. And you really don't want to be all the time. That's why focusing on mana regeneration is really important. Before you are getting those purple items, you can always look for blue items that give you just a lot of mana regeneration, or where you can trade mana regeneration on it. At this point it's also really cheap to trade all blue items, so you can easily trade all your blue items with full mana regeneration. Other than that, for the melee build we want for sure to play with a 2-piece general set, which gives us just flat 150 melee heavy hit, which is of course giga strong. And for the range set I focused here a little bit more on cooldown reduction. For the weapons, they are really not easy to get alternatives, and that's why you will always go with those 2 weapons, but they are also just generally just really good. Okay, that's it, all you need to know about the gear. Now let's talk real quick about the stat distribution. In both of the builds you see how you should distribute your stats, but it's just important to put as much points as possible early into wisdom, that you have enough mana regeneration, and then the rest is really not too important. Okay, that's it, all you need to know for the builds. The link to both of those builds on Questlog can be of course found in the video description. Now have fun watching both of those builds in action. If you have questions, feel free to ask me in the comment sections. If you like the video and want to support me, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see ya in the next one.